Starseed of Gaia, your vessel is being recalibrated at a cellular level at this exact moment. I am Anya, emissary of the Galactic Federation of Light, and I bring you a direct transmission from the Arcturian Council. If you enjoy videos like this, consider subscribing. Most people who watch are not subscribed yet. Starseed. The timeline you've been waiting for is not approaching slowly anymore. It's colliding with your reality right now. And what I'm about to transmit is not content, not motivation, not a pretty spiritual idea to hold for 5 minutes and forget. This is a code. A living frequency thread moving through your field as you listen. Because something inside you has been held in suspension, like a sealed letter placed in your chest long before you learned your name. And the seal is weakening. The pressure you've felt, the restlessness, the sense that the world is too loud and too small at the same time. It isn't random. It's the soul's inner alarm clock, ringing from a place your mind can't fully reach. And here is the first revelation. What feels like chaos on the outside is often the universe clearing the path so your highest timeline can merge with your current life. The breakdowns are not punishments. They are repositionings. Doors closing are not rejections. They are frequency corrections. And if you've been seeing repeating signs, 111, 333, 444, or waking at the same time night after night as if the dark itself is tapping your shoulder, that's not paranoia. That's the grid speaking. Because your activation window is open, your star family is near, and your soul contract is coming up for immediate review. By the end of this transmission, you will understand how to navigate a timeline jump without fear, how to stabilize your field when reality accelerates, and how to align with the mission frequency you carried into this world. But listen closely. The shift won't ask for your permission. It will ask for your presence. And if you're ready, you're going to feel something in your body while I speak, because your DNA recognizes this tone. Your remembering has already begun, and there is no going back to sleep the same way again. There is a moment in every starseed's path when life stops moving in a straight line. The mind expects progress to look like steps, plan, effort, result. But awakening is not linear. Awakening is orbital, like a planet re-entering a hidden gravitational field and suddenly being pulled into a different trajectory. This is what many of you are experiencing now. The sensation that your life is being rearranged by an invisible intelligence, and yet the rearrangement feels messy, emotional, even disruptive. As the Arcturians transmit, a timeline collision happens when your frequency rises faster than the structures around you can adapt. The higher version of your life, the one where you speak your truth, honor your sensitivity, align with purpose, and stop shrinking, has always existed as a probability. It wasn't fantasy. It was real potential. But it required one thing: you becoming the kind of being who could hold that timeline without distortion. So how does the collision begin? Usually not with fireworks. It begins with subtle symptoms. You lose interest in what once held you. You can no longer pretend to care about conversations that skim the surface. You feel exhausted after being around certain people, not because they are bad, but because your nervous system can no longer tolerate frequencies that are incompatible with your mission signature. You start craving silence. You begin waking at odd hours, as if something is calling you into the in-between spaces where the veil is thinner. Then comes the acceleration. Suddenly, the normal schedule of life starts cracking. Relationships feel misaligned. Work feels hollow. Your identity feels tight, like a costume you've outgrown. And here is where many starseeds panic. They think something is going wrong. They think they are losing stability. But what is actually happening is that your old timeline, built from survival, approval, and adaptation, is being gently, firmly destabilized so your soul can take back the steering wheel. Imagine you lived for years in a house with low ceilings. You learned to duck. You learned to move carefully. You learned not to raise your arms fully. At first it was normal. But then one day you walk into a building with high ceilings and suddenly your body wants to stretch. But the old habit remains. You still duck. You still shrink. That's what this era is like. The energetic ceiling has lifted, but your conditioned self still tries to crouch. The timeline collision is the moment your soul says, "Stand up fully now." Many of you are feeling this collision as emotional waves. You can be fine one moment and then, without warning, grief rises. Not grief about a specific event, but grief about all the years you betrayed your own knowing. Grief about the times you stayed silent. Grief about the dreams you postponed. This grief is not weakness. It is energy releasing from the body as it prepares to hold higher voltage. As the Arcturians transmit, the body is the first to know a timeline is shifting. You may feel pressure in the head, buzzing in the spine, tingling in the hands, or sudden fatigue that feels like your cells are asking for stillness to recalibrate. Some of you experience vivid dreams, symbols, star maps, unfamiliar places that feel like home. Others feel emotional sensitivity intensify, as if your heart has become an antenna, and the external world mirrors it. Systems wobble. Truth surfaces. Institutions reveal their cracks. Families go through strange purging cycles. It can feel like the entire collective is trembling. But you are not here to be swallowed by the tremble. You are here to become a stabilizing frequency inside it. Here is the key. A timeline collision is not merely change, it is a merge. You are not abandoning your life, you are upgrading it. But upgrades require removing incompatible components. That's why certain friendships fade. That's why certain desires disappear. That's why you can't go back to old habits the same way. Your field has already tasted a higher truth. A practical way to navigate the collision is to stop asking, "How do I get back to normal?" and begin asking, "What is trying to activate through me?" Notice what keeps repeating. Notice what your intuition keeps highlighting. Notice what makes you feel alive even if it scares you. Your fear is not proof of misalignment. Sometimes fear is simply proof that the old self is losing control. And this is where the starseed ache makes sense. That strange emptiness you've carried into grocery store aisles, quiet commutes, and conversations that should feel normal but don't. This ache was never a flaw. It was a compass. It was the soul keeping you oriented even when the world tried to hypnotize you into forgetting. Because you did not arrive here by accident. You incarnated into density because density was the assignment. You came to translate light into form. And now, the collision is occurring because you are finally ready to embody the version of you that does not need permission to shine. And in a moment, I'm going to reveal why the amnesia you felt was not a mistake at all, why the veil was a strategy, and why it is dissolving now, at this exact point in the planetary cycle. The greatest misunderstanding about Starseed awakening is the belief that you lost your mission. That you arrived here and somehow forgot what you came to do, like a traveler misplacing a map. But as the Arcturians transmit, nothing was lost. The forgetting was designed. The veil was not punishment. The veil was a form of intelligent protection, like a buffer between a high-voltage current and delicate circuitry. If you had arrived on Earth with full memory of your star origin, your multidimensional abilities, and the architecture of energy you've known across civilizations, your nervous system would have been overwhelmed. Imagine remembering entire worlds while living inside a dense body, inside a culture that denies most of what you sense. The contradiction alone could fracture the psyche. So the veil was mercy. The veil was strategy. The veil was also part of the test. Because the deeper question was never, "Can you remember when everything is obvious?" The deeper question was, "Can you choose truth without constant proof? Can you choose love without applause? Can you serve without needing validation? Can you follow resonance even when the mind can't explain it?" This is why many starseeds grew up feeling different, but unable to name why. You sensed energy in rooms. You felt people's emotions before they spoke. You noticed patterns others ignored. You had dreams that felt more real than waking life, but you learned to edit yourself. You learned to shrink your gifts to stay safe, and you were rewarded for being normal. Not because you were wrong, but because the world wasn't ready to mirror you. So you adapted. You developed a personality that could survive Earth. You built a persona that could function in schedules and expectations. You became fluent in blending in. And this survival training was useful, until the moment your soul contract began to activate. Now the tension begins. The galactic self inside you speaks the language of resonance, frequency, mission. But the Earth persona speaks the language of safety, approval, predictability. It says, don't disrupt, don't risk rejection, don't speak about what you know. Meanwhile, your higher self whispers, be the signal, stop dimming, stand where you are placed. This is why awakening can feel like a tug of war. It's not that you are failing, it's that two versions of you are negotiating control. As the Arcturians transmit, the veil dissolves in stages, like fog lifting off a mountain at sunrise. Not all at once, slowly enough for your nervous system to adjust. Yet undeniable once you begin to recognize the outlines. This is why you may be experiencing strange bodily sensations, emotional waves without a clear cause, and synchronicities that multiply like a storm. And let's speak about the signs, because many of you are seeing them. Repeating numbers, certain phrases appearing through different mouths, random meetings that feel orchestrated, books appearing by chance, a sudden magnetism towards sacred geometry, star maps, healing modalities, particular locations, certain tones or frequencies. This is not randomness. This is the contract calling to you through the language of resonance. The contract is not a paper stored in an astral filing cabinet. It is a living pattern encoded in your subtle bodies. It is tones, colors, geometric instruction sets woven into your multidimensional DNA. Your preferences are often coordinates. Your fascinations are often breadcrumbs. Your longings, especially the ones you can't explain, are often memories of frequency. And here's the part that shocks many starseeds. The contract doesn't only ask you to help others. It asks you to become the kind of being who can hold higher voltage without distortion. This means your life will purge what cannot survive your upgrade. That can look like relationships shifting, identities dissolving, habits becoming unbearable, careers feeling empty, and a sudden intolerance for superficiality or manipulation. You are not becoming too sensitive. Your blueprint is asserting itself. A practical way to work with the veil dissolving is to observe where your body contracts. Notice the chest tightening before speaking truth. Notice the throat constricting when you consider sharing your real experiences. Notice the guilt for resting, the shame for being different, the pressure to perform spirituality instead of living it. Programming is not only cultural and ancestral. Some programming is cosmic agreements to remain hidden until a frequency threshold was reached. But that threshold is here, and when you truly see the program, it loses power. Awareness is a solvent. The moment you recognize the script, you are no longer fully inside it. Ask yourself in moments of contraction, whose voice is this? Is this belief rooted in truth or protection? If I weren't afraid, what would I choose? That single question can collapse a false timeline. Because once the veil clears, something else begins. Your star code starts resurfacing, and you'll notice people responding to you in strange ways, as if your presence alone is activating them. The ebook, The 12 Arcturian Portals, a trilogy that teaches you how to activate your 5D connection with the Arcturian masters through 12 energetic portals, practical techniques, activation protocols, and rituals that awaken your stellar DNA. From amplified intuition to direct communication with spiritual guides. Attention, Limited edition. The link to get your trilogy is in the first pinned comment. There comes a stage in awakening where the starseed realizes something unsettling and beautiful. The mission is not only something you do, it is something you are. The mind wants tasks, titles, and measurable outcomes. The mind wants a checklist. I will heal people. I will teach. I will build a community. I will make content. I will start a project. But the soul understands something far deeper. You are a transmitter. Your nervous system, your heart field, your coherence. These are the instruments. As the Arcturians transmit, some souls incarnate with a specific function, to carry frequencies that reorganize reality around them. Not through force, not through preaching, but through resonance. Think of how a tuning fork works. It doesn't argue with the air. It vibrates, and anything near it begins to align. That is what many of you are doing without realizing it. Have you noticed that people confess truths around you? That they feel calmer just by being near you? That your presence seems to provoke endings, awakenings, and breakthroughs, sometimes even conflict, without you trying? This isn't personality. This isn't coincidence. This is transmission. Your field carries an instruction set, and this is why your life has felt intense. Because carrying a high-voltage signal inside a dense world creates friction. The world tries to press you into acceptable shapes. It tries to make you smaller, quieter, simpler. But your field is not designed to be small. It is designed to be clear. The challenge is that many starseeds learned early to hide their sensitivity. They were told they were too much, too intense, too emotional, too intuitive, too weird. So they developed coping strategies: people-pleasing, perfectionism, staying silent, doubting themselves, avoiding visibility, postponing their gifts for someday. These strategies were intelligent for survival, but they become suffocating when your mission activates. As the Arcturians transmit, the activation phase often brings a crisis of identity. You begin to feel the old self dying, not physically, but psychologically. The persona you constructed to be accepted begins to dissolve. The ego interprets this as danger, but the soul recognizes it as liberation. This is where many of you experience what feels like chaos. But the chaos is often just the restructuring that happens when you stop cooperating with what violates your frequency. You stop tolerating disrespect. You stop numbing your truth. You stop betraying your own inner knowing. And the world reacts, because your new coherence exposes distortion. This is why starseeds often go through relationship shifts during activation. Not because love is failing, but because frequency is changing. Some relationships were built on your old self's compliance. When you become coherent, the contract changes. You either rise together or you separate. And separation is not always tragedy. Sometimes it is sacred geometry in motion, two lines that diverge so both can remain true. This topic is also about your gifts becoming embodied. Many starseeds have spiritual knowledge, but feel stuck in daily life. The reason is simple. Information is not embodiment. You can understand concepts and still hide. You can read about frequency and still betray your intuition. Embodiment means you live the message through choices, boundaries, truth, rest, presence, integrity, compassion without self-abandonment. And here is one of the most practical revelations. Your mission current activates through small steps. It rarely begins as a grand announcement. It begins as a quiet inner command. Clean your space, forgive, drink water, go outside, create the thing you keep postponing, stop arguing with your intuition. The mission is not always glamorous. It is consistent alignment. If this message resonated with you, hit the like button now and tell us in the comments how this echoed in your consciousness. And now, listen carefully. When your presence becomes the message, you will notice the world responding to you differently. Opportunities appear. People seek you out. Old doors close, new doors open. But the greatest change is internal. You begin to trust your signal more than your fear, because fear is not always warning. Sometimes fear is the nervous system encountering expansion. Cliffhanger. And in the next topic, I'm going to show you why you cannot do this alone, why star families are reconvening, and how resonance with the right people can accelerate your activation in ways you can't achieve by yourself. If this message ignited something within you and you feel the call to help carry it to others, you may become a channel member. As a member, you gain access to custom emojis and exclusive members-only videos. And your donation helps us continue building this sacred space. You may also choose to leave your offering as a super thanks. Every seed planted here becomes part of someone else's miracle. Your support is not merely financial, but an act of energetic amplification. All donations are devoted entirely to the maintenance of the channel and the creation of new transmissions and videos. One of the quiet tragedies of the starseed path is isolation. Not just loneliness in the human sense, but energetic isolation. The feeling that you are carrying a frequency no one around you can mirror. You can be surrounded by people and still feel unseen. You can have conversations all day and still feel like you're speaking from behind glass. This is not because you are broken. It is because you are misaligned with your resonance field. As the Arcturians transmit, a single candle is light, but many candles create a field. A single note is sound, but a chord changes the room. Your activation was never meant to be a solo performance. It is a harmonic event. This is why you may suddenly feel drawn to new circles, new communities, new locations, or certain people who feel strangely familiar. You may recognize them through the sensation of instant trust, tears without explanation, a feeling of relief, like putting down a heavy bag you didn't realize you were carrying. Sometimes the recognition is subtle. You simply feel more you when you are near them. But discernment is essential. Resonance is not the same as drama. Many starseeds confuse intensity for alignment. Intensity can be karmic, addictive, or unresolved trauma. Resonance feels different. It stabilizes you even when it challenges you. It expands you without draining you. It makes you more truthful, not more confused. So how do you find the others? Start by honoring your own frequency. You cannot attract resonance while you are betraying yourself. If you keep performing a version of you that is not true, you will attract people who resonate with that performance. But when you become coherent, when you stop shrinking, stop apologizing for your sensitivity, stop pretending, you emit a clearer signal. And that signal is trackable. As the Arcturians transmit, star families reconvene through frequency markers. The markers can look like shared language, shared values, shared devotion to growth, shared fascination with sacred geometry and multidimensional consciousness, shared desire to serve rather than to dominate. You may also notice grid moments. You meet someone at the exact time you needed confirmation. You join a community and hear the exact phrase your intuition has been whispering. You watch a video that names your private experience. These are not accidents. These are convergences. And once you find resonance, your activation amplifies. Because your nervous system feels safer. Your voice becomes stronger. Your gifts unfold faster. Not because you're being pushed, but because the body relaxes enough to allow more light through. This is also why some of you have felt a sudden urge to speak, create, share, or step into visibility. Visibility is not vanity when it is mission-aligned. Visibility is a beacon. A lighthouse does not chase ships. It stands and shines, and ships adjust their course. But visibility also triggers fear. Old programs rise. Who do you think you are? Don't get your hopes up. Be realistic. People will judge you. The truth is, yes, some people will judge you. Because your frequency will disrupt the comfort of those who are committed to sleep. But your mission is not to be comfortable. Your mission is to be clear. Are these truths expanding your perspective? Share this video with someone who needs to hear this. Because once you connect with resonance, the timeline accelerates even more. And if you don't understand acceleration, you might mistake it for danger when it is actually the sign you're entering your harmonic window. Acceleration is one of the most misunderstood spiritual phenomena. Many people assume that if life speeds up, it must be unstable, chaotic, or wrong. But as the Arcturians transmit, speed is not the enemy. Misalignment is the enemy. Acceleration often happens when you enter the trajectory you encoded before birth, like a spacecraft locking onto the correct path and gaining momentum. This is why some of you feel like your life is moving at light speed. One day you tolerate something, the next day you cannot. One day you are unsure, the next day you are clear. One day you fit inside an identity, the next day it feels suffocating. This is not moodiness. This is recalibration. The nervous system interprets acceleration as threat because it likes predictability. The ego likes control. But the soul likes alignment. And alignment often feels like surrender, letting the next step reveal itself without needing the full map. Here's the practical distinction. Panic feels like grasping. Panic feels like rushing from fear. Panic says, I'm going to miss my chance. Alignment feels like urgency without chaos. Alignment says, now is open. It's the difference between running because you're terrified and moving because you're called. So how do you ride acceleration? First, stop demanding certainty before you obey resonance. The soul does not give you a full blueprint at once. It gives you the next faithful step. You learn the path by walking it. Second, learn to ask the right questions. In moments of speed, ask, what is being revealed? What is being removed? What truth is trying to emerge? Where am I gripping out of fear? Where am I avoiding out of fear? Because there are two distortions that sabotage starseeds in acceleration. The first distortion is rushing. Rushing is fear disguised as ambition. It is forcing a timeline because you don't trust divine timing. The second distortion is avoidance. Avoidance is fear disguised as being practical. It is delaying because you are afraid of being seen. As the Arcturians transmit, your contract contains contingencies for quantum leaps. There are built-in alternate routes that still lead to fulfillment. That's why detours weren't wasted. That's why delays were often training. You are forming roots underground, and roots are invisible until the tree is strong enough to stand in storms. Here is a daily practice that stabilizes acceleration. Begin your day by anchoring into the body, not into the mind. Place your attention in the chest, in the belly, in the spine. Breathe as if you are telling the nervous system, we are safe to expand. Then ask, what would alignment look like today? The answer may be simple. Speak truth in one conversation. Clean your space. Rest. Create. Stop arguing with your intuition. Take one courageous step. And remember, the mission is a frequency you embody in every interaction. If your contract involves healing, your kindness heals. Your boundaries heal. Your integrity heals. If your contract involves awakening, your example awakens more than preaching. If your contract involves building, your consistency builds the grid. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be part of this transformational cosmic journey. Because acceleration doesn't just change your schedule, it begins dissolving your old identity, and what falls away can feel like loss, until you realize it's liberation in disguise. There is a sacred moment in every awakening where you realize you cannot carry the old self into the new timeline. You can bring your wisdom. You can bring your compassion. You can bring your experiences, but you cannot bring the masks. As the Arcturians transmit, recalibration is the process of removing everything that cannot hold higher voltage. This includes roles you played to earn love, coping mechanisms you used to survive, habits that kept you numb, and identities built on external validation. The untrue layers do not fall away to punish you. They fall away to free you. This is why some of you are experiencing grief. Real grief. Grief for versions of life you thought you would have. Grief for people you wanted to come with you. Grief for identities you worked hard to build. And grief is not failure. Grief is integration. Grief is the psyche releasing what it can no longer carry. Expect shifts. Relationships may change because you stop abandoning yourself. Careers may shift because you stop cooperating with what violates your soul. Some systems may reject you when you stop being controllable. And yes, that can feel terrifying. The ego says, I'm losing everything. The soul says, I'm being unburdened. Here is the deeper truth. Your body will tell you what is misaligned. Pay attention to fatigue that lifts when you tell the truth. Pay attention to peace that arrives when you make the hard choice. Pay attention to how your energy behaves when you say yes out of obligation versus yes out of resonance. As the Arcturians transmit, the universe recalibrates to match your authentic signature. That means what is not aligned will feel heavier until you can't carry it anymore. The weight is not cruelty. The weight is feedback. And this is why many starseeds reach a breaking point where they can no longer pretend. They can no longer smile through misalignment. They can no longer tolerate superficiality. They can no longer sacrifice themselves for comfort. This is not becoming difficult. This is becoming coherent. Recalibration also includes spiritual hygiene. When your frequency rises, your boundaries must rise too. Not walls. Boundaries. A wall is fear. A boundary is clarity. You decide what energies enter your field. You decide what conversations you participate in. You decide what narratives you feed. You decide what you consume mentally. Because your mind is a portal. This is where many starseeds unknowingly sabotage their upgrade. They keep consuming fear narratives, conflict cycles, and low-frequency entertainment, then wonder why their nervous system feels unstable. Your field becomes what you feed it. So feed it coherence, feed it truth, feed it beauty, feed it silence. Surrender does not mean passivity. Surrender means cooperating with the upgrade. It means letting the old identity die with dignity so the true one can live without apology. Because when the old self dissolves, something extraordinary happens. You stop chasing the new world, and you begin radiating an invitation so strong that others start waking up just by being near you. The mind wants to transform the world through argument, debate, force, and strategy. But the Arcturian path reveals something far more powerful. Reality reshapes through frequency. You don't change the collective by convincing everyone. You change the collective by becoming coherent enough that your field becomes contagious. As the Arcturians transmit, you are not merely a person with ideas. You are a node in a grid, and when one node stabilizes at a higher frequency, it influences the nodes around it. This is why your private decisions matter. This is why what you do when no one is watching matters. Because frequency is not performance. Frequency is truth. When you choose integrity, you strengthen the grid. When you forgive, you clear a timeline. When you speak truth with love, you anchor a new normal. When you stop participating in fear narratives, you collapse their power. When you create art, healing spaces, communities, inventions, prayers, you are delivering coded medicine into the world. You may have believed your obstacles were setbacks, your confusion a mistake, your delays a failure. But the truth is more profound. You chose with exquisite care to incarnate with partial amnesia so that you would awaken precisely now when Earth needed you fully online. Consider how many times you thought you were behind, only to realize later you were being protected. Consider how many doors closed, only to reveal they were never meant for your frequency. Consider how many heartbreaks stripped you down, until only what was real remained. Every delay was divine choreography. Like a seed underground, you weren't doing nothing. You were forming roots, and roots are invisible until the tree is strong enough to stand in storms. Now, the timeline jump is not merely planetary or galactic. It is personal. It is in your sleep, your intuition, your sudden clarity, your unwillingness to betray yourself, your increased sensitivity, your inner command to align. And here is the invitation. Tonight, before sleep, whisper a directive into your field, not as a wish, but as an energetic command. I remember my cosmic origins. I choose to activate my soul contract now for my highest good and for the greater unfolding. Then watch what happens. The universe answers vows with rearrangements. Before you scroll away, anchor something real in the comments. One intention. Not polished, not perfect. True. Clarity. Courage. Protection. Alignment. Healing. Release. Mission. Then respond to someone else with support. Because this is not content. This is collective alignment. When one starseed speaks, another remembers. The grid strengthens through recognition. If this message impacted your life, leave your like, comment your reflection, and share with others. Each of you is part of this chain of light.